Well, Charles, that was a little bit of an impromptu opening. Welcome to Sunday.
It is a pleasure to be back here.
And Secret agent. And
we're giving it away.
But it's fun to have those little interesting openers. And of course, today we're going to be examining Her Majesty's secret servers, multiple servers apparently.
Absolutely. And we must start, as usual, each Sunday service with a hymn to our Creator and our paean to the wondrous work of the art department. And this is really special.
Well, you know, we wanted to go with the Her Majesty on the throne, and of course she's got her smashed email server there, along with hygienic products that allow her to...
What do you think she's gesturing about with her hand? It's this big.
At this point, what difference does it make?
Makes a big difference.
Yeah.
And I do like the fact that I believe the movie trivia people out there, you were telling me that the original movie is not a movie in which Sean Connery played.
George Lazenby, the one and only James Bond film in which he played the titular role.
There you go. And the thing of it is, this is name dropping, but I have had the good fortune to spend time with Sean Connery down in the Bahamas, who's a close friend of one of my closest friends. And to that close friend, I hope you're watching. And Connery is getting on and is, I think, out of public life, but when he was still in public life, one of the things that's really special about him, unlike some of these spoiled brat, or too many of these spoiled brat actors out there, he is so genuine, or was so genuine and kind to the many, many adoring people who would flock to him. He had plenty of time for, especially little kids, really nice to them.
That's good.
Good man.
Didn't he give a totally bizarre interview to Barbara Walters at one point where he was talking about his...
Yeah, we don't need to bring that one up.
We won't talk
about bring that one up.
Now, I'm looking at our playlist here, and I'm not sure if I have the most current episode in there. Let me make sure I add that. We've been very busy, Charles, so we haven't necessarily had the opportunity to do every closing in episode on Wednesdays. So I apologize to people who have been wanting that. But of course, we had that great interview with Gary Byrne the other day, and Gary's civil RICO suit against the Clintons. So I'm just updating that playlist right there. You know, people who have become frequent fans of Sunday with Charles can, of course, get all the Charles Ortel information they can take by going to the playlist there and checking out all the different videos we've done. We're up to, this is the 84th one today.
I think that excludes the interview with Gary.
Correct, yeah.
So this would be 85th, actually, if you counted that.
Yeah, I mean, you know, you're quite prolific, I must say.
I don't know about it, just me. I think you're the one who's out there doing 2 or 3 of these things a day. I mean, I shudder to think how many are on your playlist.
Well, you know, the other thing that I wanted to mention, of course, is that this is the first Sunday with Charles episode since live streaming has been restored to the original Crowdsource the Truth channel. So hopefully we get our viewership back up to where it was and help get the message out. It's also important that people watching remember Crowdsource the Truth really needs the sponsorship of the crowdsource community to keep going. We're just past 1 year of doing Crowdsource the Truth, and I've been, trying to make this my full-time job. So really need to get the sponsorship up in order for me to be able to continue. People can go to patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth and become monthly sponsors. Even for $1 or $5, it makes a big difference. And for people who prefer to make a one-time sponsorship payment, you can do that at paypal.me/crowdsourcethetruth. And if people are watching regularly and they want the show to continue, they really should consider doing that. And I've got a new thing here also. I don't know if that's good or not, but we've got a little Charles Ortel graphic showing up to identify you to the people who maybe don't know.
I shudder to think what that looks like.
It's just a title graphic, not that huge of a deal. But as usual, Charles, you have prepared a presentation for us. People who are new to the program, I also want to point out that they can be following you on Twitter at Charles Ortel, and you are definitely frequently tweeting out useful information. Pleased to see your followers are over 30,000 now.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I mean, I actually would encourage people to think about, if you have the time, unfortunately I do have the time, but if you have the time to send messages out showcasing what you believe is interesting. I just sent this out 20 minutes ago because I focus on, I got into this whole media thing pointing out the risks that I think we still face and that have been compounded since 2008 by the misguided actions, first of George W. Bush and then by the misguided actions of Barack Obama and his team. I think we're back to past the danger zone, and I'd highly recommend the Zero Hedge free site because it has a tremendous number of interesting stories with the analysis spelled out, and most importantly with the source material, so that if you want to check what they're saying for yourself, you can go read the source material. And it's to say that it's better than the New York Times is like saying life is better than death. I mean, it's not. I mean, it is the quality of reporting that I think we're seeing on your channel and then on channels like it, of which there are a few, and in the alternative media is so much better and so much quicker. And in fact, insights from some of the good people on Twitter, I think, begin to set the news cycle, begin to change the news cycle. And so I do find myself spending more time perhaps than I should on Twitter.
And people can follow Crowdsource the Truth on Twitter at CS the Truth. I'm usually mostly just tweeting about videos that we're doing, but frequently I'm retweeting important things that you put up, Dr. Corsi, Thomas Paine, True Pundit, variety of different people. Twitter, I never really was using Twitter before I started Crowdsource the Truth, but I agree with you completely, Charles. Social media has really empowered the members of the public to share information, and a big part of what I'm trying to do with Crowdsource the Truth is not just make money. Obviously, everybody needs money to live, but by changing the paradigm through which news is funded, where if every person watching paid $1 a month versus one sponsor paying, $100,000 or $1 million to some giant corporation, the news is no longer biased toward whoever is paying for it. We can distribute the cost over the entire crowd. So that's a big part of what we're trying to do.
And I would echo and say that what you're doing here is very creative and clever from a business strategy standpoint, because the lamestream media, even to a certain extent, Fox, and perhaps especially Fox, is hostage to a distribution format and a cycle. You're not going to change the fact, I don't think, that there's 7 days in the week, and you're not going to change the fact that the highly paid anchors don't want to work on the weekend, and with reason. They have families, they have obligations, they need some time off. So you're not going to see the same caliber of news, I don't think, on the weekends out of the lamestream media, assuming that caliber is high. And then I bring it up every time, and I have to. Some people may give you a hard time about your promotions. whatever you just said there is so much less objectionable than going on Fox and first you have, this medicine, and this adult diaper, and this, this drug which you should take to, for schizophrenia, but it could also kill you and mutilate you, cause a heart attack.
Right.
I mean, you watch these commercials like, God Almighty, you're scared out of your mind, and then you got the stupid cars for kids and these fake charities, etc. Whereas this approach that we do together, and you do with your other hosts, allows people to tell a story in its entirety. I can't tell you the number of people who have now sent me emails or confirmed that they really like this because it is a deep dive into a pressing issue. And we frankly have been way, way ahead of the pack. Just pointing people, and I think pointing investigators and pointing government authorities around the world to where you really need to look to understand the largest political and corruption scandal that has ever happened to date in the history of the modern history of this planet. I mean, maybe back in Rome there was something worse, or way back, but in the last century there has not been a bigger scandal than this scandal, which unfolds before your eyes. And dare I say, the news that we break, the links we provide to people, I do know go out to some of the established media and certainly to the investigators. And I think they watch this and then they say, hey, these people have a point. Why don't we report on some of it?
Exactly.
And we're seeing more and more of that.
There's one other factor as well, in addition to not maybe wanting to work on particular days. A lot of people still think I'm a conspiracy theorist or whatever, even if you don't believe any of that as far as Operation Mockingbird or whatever. You take somebody like Tucker Carlson, he's got to be paid $5 million, $10 million?
No, I don't think that much.
$1 million?
He's probably low millions, as a guess.
Okay, 1 or 2 million, even so. He went to report on Las Vegas. If somebody at Fox is getting a lot of advertising dollars from MGM, all they have to say is, you know what, Tucker, no more Vegas. And how hard is he going to push back? Is he going to give up that $1 million job to do it? Because he's beholden to that. So, well, again, it's not necessarily a conspiracy over there, but there's these levers of control that we're trying to remove.
Well, I think the other issue, of course, is that when you're running, not that I know how to run a Fox, but when you're running a large organization like that has certain standards and has gigantic art departments and has this and that, you can't, you have to lock in advance what you're going to show. I mean, I understand all these big places, 10 o'clock in the morning during the week, there's a producers meeting and they decide, what should get the most emphasis in the week ahead. But they're not as flexible as you are. Right. And so you can we see a hot story and we can get a show right up in detail. Fortunately, now you've got a cadre of guests who can instantly come in and help you help us all analyze what the breaking developments. So this is all, I think, good and a competitive advantage. They're not going to go and say, well, let's have a small little offshoot of Fox over here to compete with the core channel. They can't do that.
No. Yeah, and also giving guests as much time as they need to cover their material is great. So with that, why don't we go right into your fantastic presentation for this week, Charles?
Well, thank you very much. I'll just spend a quick second on the first page here. And what I would encourage people to understand, I think the Trump administration has been biding its time, waiting to make the case, the real case, which is not an anti-Clinton case. It's an anti-uniparty case. It's an anti-Obama administration case, because the big unanswered question here, in my mind, is how many people within the Obama administration and carryovers from the Bush administration who were still in the security services, how many people recognized the Clinton operation for what it was in the very beginning? It's not like when you take over, as Secretary of State, I imagine, it's not like going in and saying, well, I'm going to be the school crossing guard on 11th Street and 6th Avenue in the morning. I mean, you're taking over a gigantic organization with all kinds of people who've been there for a while, particularly in state. You have these careerists who think they're above the politicians. Why didn't these career people, why didn't our 17 vaunted security services notice that the Secretary of State and her key aides were exclusively conducting the business of the State Department, via leaky private servers, maybe in Chappaqua, maybe who knows where they were, and who knows how far back they were doing this. We still haven't heard how many servers may have been used by the Clinton Foundation. And we know there were secret Clinton Foundation offices in New York City, downtown. We went to it at 77 Water. There was a secret office in Chicago. We know there was one young guy there who was supposedly a lawyer. There were secret offices in Boston. There were multiple secret offices internationally. We know that Hillary Clinton and her people were flying all over the world. We know that they weren't careful enough with their devices. Why didn't more than one security service get, call up, I don't know who you'd call up, and say, hey, this is lunacy. We've got somebody who has, almost the highest security clearance in the country, conducting 100% of the business of the United States of America in the middle of a global debacle, with lots of hostile actors interested in pushing this country over the edge. And nobody complained about it. And not only she was able to do this like for her first year, she did it for the whole period of her tenure as Secretary of State. And then on the way out the door, Madam Secretary, we'd like you to sign this. What form? I'm not signing any form. You want me to throw one of Bill's glass figurines at you? I'm not signing this form. And she walks out, and her people walk out with all of this information and hold on to the information. And there's no record in this, now ongoing investigation of people saying, it's getting more dangerous. And then no Inspector General at the State Department the entire 4 years she was there.
How did they do that?
I think the answer is clear to me. The Clinton people had dirt on Obama. They must have had something with which they could blackmail is perhaps too strong a word, but threaten Team Obama and say, listen, you're going to let us do what we want to do, or things will not end well for you. It has to be something like that. It can't be, well, there are plenty of, Obama was fond of saying, all nations are great. All departments of the government are great. So if one government is so if Hillary's messing up our secrets, maybe other people are messing up our secrets. I want to go play golf badly, which is what he did so much of. It can't have been like that. There had to be one competent person out of all of this executive branch, all of the FBI, all these security services, one competent person had to say, Chief, this ain't working.
Yeah. So just to understand, you're saying Obama badly wanted to play golf, or he wanted to play golf badly?
I think he badly didn't want to play golf, which is why he played it so badly.
So badly,
I am, as one of our mutual friends can attest, I'm an okay tennis player, but I am a disastrous golfer. Even I could beat Barack Obama at golf. And I'm really bad.
Wow.
Anyway. So what we're going to get into today is actually some very good news that I think we've broken through a logjam here. I'm getting reports from many different people now. We're not going to go into names, but I can tell you the good people are engaged around the world, and the case has been made, and the table has been set, and the evidence has been well studied and analyzed. I suspect there are already sealed indictments in the Clinton Foundation matter. And I think what's holding it up is that we're talking here, I focus primarily on charity fraud, but I think what the team that's looking at, the teams that are looking at this, particularly at the federal government level, I think they're focusing on corruption and espionage.
Right.
And with espionage trials, that's a little bit more dicey, because the defendant has leverage against the government. If a defendant could stall an espionage trial a little bit, not forever, but you can. I'm told by lawyers.
Why?
Because it's a trial, right? So you're a private citizen in the courtroom. You have a right to defend yourself. In your defense, if you know of things the government has done wrong, you can embarrass the government in the defense, and you can threaten. You can negotiate. Let's just put it that way. Charity fraud is a different story, which is why I've been encouraging, and I hope you're listening out there, particularly you in Salt Lake City, Mr. U.S. Attorney Huber, with a charity fraud prosecution and conviction. We saw in the case of Corinne Brown that it took from July, it took a matter of months to get Corinne Brown convicted, and then I'd say less than a year to get her sentenced to spend 5 years in federal prison for an $800,000 charity fraud. You get these Clintons, you get the professional advisors, you get the accountants, you get trustees, you get big donors convicted of charity fraud, and with that, you then land on them for espionage too.
Yeah.
Then they're a convicted felon accused of espionage, and I think it'd be a little bit easier to get that across the line. So anyway, today we want to report on some new developments that I hope will get people pretty happy.
Well, before we get too into that, Charles, I just wanted to ask you briefly about something that's just coming to mind right now, and this has been on people's minds for quite a while. We identified long ago this internet router at 4809 Sprayer Street, and of course that was a home that was owned by Imran Awan. I can't help but wonder if Imran is getting all this special attention from Gowan, Silva, Winograd, a Clinton-linked legal firm, and we see that Michael Mirando, the prosecuting attorney, the U.S. attorney, hung up the phone on me when I called his office to make sure that he was aware of this evidence. I found that quite shocking, but certainly if anything that Imran Awan was doing is somehow linked to Hillary's use of an illegal server, perhaps he was backing up the data from it or sending it somewhere or sending it to her or who knows what, that could explain why this guy is being handled with such kid gloves.
Yeah, I mean, I think what happened, and I will say that it must be tough for the U.S. government to defend itself, given the prevalence of the practice of allowing so many private contractors to get involved doing government work, so many large private contractors, and given the fact that, you know, I'm not like this, but there are a lot of people in the 13 BlackBerry crowd, you know, one cell phone isn't enough, they've got to have 13 of them, and they've got to have multiple alias and different email accounts. And when you start operating in that fashion, when you're married, when you have a family, an extended family, when you travel, the likelihood that you're going to screw up and you're going to use an unsecure device,
right,
and that you're going to make a mistake, and then you're going up, you know, at one point, I think under Barack Obama's tenure, people warned that the #1 cyber threat to the United States of America was China. You know, there are countries that have, and I'm sure we do it too, that have large groups of experienced people with powerful equipment who are trying to penetrate. They see the sloppiness and they try to penetrate it. So, you know, don't try to tell me, you know, Clinton supporters, that there weren't, the instant that people began to notice Hillary Clinton and maybe Barack Obama sending personal emails from unsecured, the instant they saw that, you know, they were really interested in scooping that stuff up.
Off to the races.
And then when they saw that idiot, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, sign up with Xavier Becerra, now the Attorney General of California, the Awan team to go in and service so many internet and information technology systems for Congress.
It's really kind of crazy. Like, why was that one guy working for so many members?
And again,
and still going to the house that he owned 2 to 3 times a week, getting paid 2.5 times the average salary, and nobody's talking about it.
And it's not like, you know, it's not like people shouldn't have known better. I mean, it's not like we're sitting there, you know, America, we're not involved in any problems around the world. I mean, we didn't just kill under Obama's tenure, in theory. We didn't kill Osama, I want to make sure I get that right, Osama bin Laden in Pakistan. We didn't do that, you know, in theory, irritating elements of that country who might then have a powerful security service which might want to penetrate our secrets and take revenge against us. I mean, it's like what I see in all this, in the Hillary Clinton decision, her decision, her people's decision to have these secret servers, in the use of the Awan team, in the lax attitude towards security, in the underestimation, you know, calling ISIS the JV, that just displays a risk profile that is so far away from being the risk profile I'd like to see in, you know, delegating responsibility to a team in the federal government to keep this nation safe. It's just so far away from being right. What's this?
Well, this is just one more thing I wanted to bring to your attention briefly before we get into the main presentation. I was so disappointed in my phone conversation with Michael Mirando because I think he handled it very unprofessionally, simply hanging up the phone. He's married to a woman named Joanne Wasserman, which that could very well be a coincidence.
Well, it probably will say who she is.
Well, people who have looked into it have said that she's not necessarily related. Donna Wasserman and Mark L. Wasserman of Baltimore.
Well, Wasserman's a pretty common name.
Pretty common name. So we don't know that she is or is not related to Debbie Wasserman Schultz, but it is interesting to note that she works, she's the manager of education initiatives at the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum, and it was brought to my attention by a member of the Crowdsource community that Debbie Wasserman Schultz was here on Facebook talking about the Holocaust Museum. I mean, again, that could be a coincidence. Debbie Wasserman Schultz, obviously Jewish, possibly interested in the Holocaust Museum. This woman with the same last name as her, possibly also Jewish and interested in the Holocaust Museum. We don't know if there's any familial connection there, but boy, that would be quite odd for the prosecutor of Imran Awan to be that tightly linked.
I would let's investigate that one carefully, because I think that could be more in the realm of
coincidence.
Coinky-dink.
It could. Just wanted to point out those coincidences to people as we delve into the slide presentation. Charles, I know you like to remind everyone we do have an international audience, and our friend Tommy Robinson, unfortunately, has been stuffed in the clink for trying to express his right to free speech.
Yeah, but we have, as you rightly point out, Jason, we have a right, absolute right to free expression, thanks in part to really Thomas Jefferson and then our founders. And that's a very important thing. When you see it as you watch around the world, for example, and there's an election going on in Turkey right now. The second you start clamping down on freedom of expression, even expression of views that seem obnoxious, you're going down a very dangerous path, because it is the human temptation, I think modern history shows, to just follow the leader, not do the kind of critical thinking that we really need to do to question authority, and you end up in this group think. You can end up way off base, going down for decades or centuries the wrong direction. So that's why I think Thomas Jefferson was so clever. He was a student of history. He convinced the other founders that it was really important that you would not have freedom in this country unless you had first the freedom to choose the religion you may want to follow, and even to choose not to follow a religion. And then with that, you should have freedom of expression as well. So what we try to do in this work that we've been doing together, and I think you do it in your other work as well, we lay out arguments, we try to analyze late-breaking news, we're focused on exposing the largest unprosecuted set of scandals in mankind's history. Once we get done with that, we've got some other things we might want to...
Just that little tiny piece of business.
But it's very important to concentrate, and it's easy to get distracted.
Yeah.
I mean, you get pulled in different directions, and I get pulled in different directions, but I'm going to relentlessly, to the extent possible, continue to focus on this. We're very close, ladies and gentlemen. I've been at this for over 3 years. That's not an awful long time, actually, to attack something this big, particularly given that the enemies are in both parties. The Republicans and Democrats were fighting it. This is not a simple, we don't like Hillary Clinton deal. This is, we don't like fraud, we don't like corruption, we don't like the uniparty, and there are a lot of people who are interested in seeing that we don't get to prosecutions and convictions and incarcerations as quickly as we might like to do.
And unlike so many of my other guests, Charles, you are bullish on the Inspector General's report, correct?
I'll take you through that actually in the body of the next slide, because there's a bunch of stuff that we need to get through first.
Sure.
But yeah. So before we don't need to pull up these links, all these links, Jason. I'll get to the ones that I think are particularly important, because I know that takes a bunch of your time.
It's our time.
That's true.
Mr. Hand.
That's true. But I think it's fair to spend a quick second on contrasting the attitude when that masterpiece baker refused to bake a wedding cake for a gay couple. Nancy Pelosi and the team and the mainstream was, that's ridiculous. You know, it's a public bit. You serve the public, you've got to serve everybody. And now, in contrast, when this restaurant owner, who it turns out is a cousin of Meryl Streep and is wealthy and is tied into, when it turns out she puts up to vote, to the staff whether the staff wants to serve a patron, and they decide after Sarah Huckabee Sanders and her, I guess, family or guests or whatever they were, 7 people have sat down to dinner. Only after they've done that do they say, we now vote, we can't serve you, would you mind leaving? And she leaves. Does she, instigate, Stormy Daniels media circle over it?
Hire that weird Evento lawyer.
Right, exactly. He may not be able to do much legal work soon, but
really?
Yeah, he's got a bar complaint against him, I think. But
doesn't seem to stop Stephen Biss. Yeah,
well, so in this case, I just think it's worth pointing out that if particularly on today, which is, I guess, Pride Day, or if we're going to preach tolerance, right, then I think it would behoove people in these restaurants to be tolerant, and all of us at large to be tolerant of our fellow citizens. But here you have a stark contrast. You have a media scrum saying that you've got to put these the in theory homophobic baker out of business.
Right.
But let's let this person, because they espouse our views, kick Sarah Huckabee Sanders. And I'll say it flat out. Let's let that idiot Maxine Waters encourage people to go around and heckle and jekyll people they don't like if they believe they're Trump supporters at their homes, when they're at the dinner. That's just wrong. I mean, that is not responsible for a government official. And Maxine Waters, sadly, is still a government official. Somehow she lives in a multi-million-dollar mansion in California, never having worked in the private sector. But we'll park that. We just simply say, this is a day where we celebrate tolerance, and this is, a teachable moment here. The Supreme Court actually, I think, ruled with the wedding cake baker, saying you do have the ability to follow your conscience in matters of religion. I don't think it was a religious issue for this Virginia cafe owner.
They just don't like her because she works for Trump.
I
mean, you know what? I do support a private business owner's right to throw somebody out because they don't like them, and whatever the reason that they don't like them, fine. But then if people say, hey, don't go to that bakery, they don't like gay people, maybe you'll go out of business. That's how that should work. I mean, it's not the same as if they're working at the DMV or something and they disallow someone, but if a Jewish person owns a bakery and a Nazi comes in, or if a black person owns a bakery and the KKK wants a cake, I support their right to tell them, no, we're not making you that cake.
Right. Well, I agree. But what I'm saying here is I think this first story, which of course occupied the news cycle for at least 2 days, front page, is ridiculous.
Yeah.
And in line with that, we have this summer of discontent that they talk about, resistance movement. This is hysterical if you think about it.
Oh wait, why did that just come
It's right, oh. You got the right one. It's actually, we'll kill 2 birds with 1 stone here. Here this young high school graduate, David Hogg, who's the anti-gun guy, has been spotted patrolling around New York with bodyguards, armed bodyguards. Now, I mean, I'm sorry. You can't have this both ways. You can't say, look,
I get to have guns, but
not
nobody else.
You. Yeah. And really, when you get into the history of why the founders were insistent upon the Second Amendment, it goes well back into history. It used to be in English history that only the wealthy, and indeed, the nobility and then the knights, only they were the ones who were mandated to have weapons. And what the founders were saying here is, we don't want it that way. We don't want only the elite to have weapons. We want everybody to have the right to bear arms so that power doesn't get concentrated in the hands of the elite. And it's a complete misreading, in my view, of American history and English history to say that what you need to do is go back. Let's go back and see in 17, whenever the amendment was, I think 82, what was a gun like
Right.
What were arms like?
Right.
Well, if they didn't have machine guns back in 1782, then that didn't mean you could. That's not. It didn't say guns. It said the right to keep and bear arms.
Right.
Right?
Yeah. Now, Charles, I know you are a very data-driven, analytical kind of guy who, I hope you won't object to what I'm about to say, but if Quinn Michaels were here with us, he would point out that David Hogg's Twitter handle very conspicuously contains 9 letters that spell his name, Davidhogg, and then 3 ones, making it an encoded 9-3, sending a message that, I mean, why does he have these 3 ones? I don't know. Perhaps a coincidence, but just wanted to point that out.
All right. So if we go back into the slides.
Enough of that.
Yeah. Now, Donald Trump, one of the things I have to say I'm growing to admire about him is he's willing to stick up for his views firmly. And he's coming back furiously against Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer and Barack Obama for making a big spectacle of this issue of the way these children are treated when, in fact, under Barack Obama, children were separated from their parents and kept in arguably worse conditions. And I think the mainstream and the resistance is very good at framing debates in ways that they think will make themselves look good and to make it very difficult to disagree. But the poll that's come back makes eminent sense to me. If you're going to be responsible, you've got parents, you better have a realistic belief that you can gain asylum inside this country.
Before you come here.
Before you come here. And if you believe that you have that realistic chance of getting asylum, then come to a port of entry with your children and do it, the accepted way. Don't do it the way these people did, going not to a port of entry, but trying to cross illegally away from ports of entry, and don't take this kind of risk with a child. It's not our fault in America that these parents.
Well, you don't even know if they're the parents in all cases.
Right, and it turns out, for example, that the vaunted Time magazine cover that had Donald Trump, it turns out that was not a case of parents taking children. That was a case of one parent kidnapping a child from the other parent and making this risky move. So I think let's take a big step back here and let's dissect this problem. Let's understand what's driving the problem. Let's understand the motivations of people involved, and let's get serious about trying to fix this problem instead of using the plight of this girl, who it turns out was not brought here in the manner suggested by this Time magazine cover. Let's go after these vicious parents for doing this. You don't steal a child in a custody fight from the other parent and then flee across from the country into the United States in a dangerous way. You don't do that. And I think the American public understands this. The polls that have come out since the original story do seem to suggest that an overwhelming majority of Americans faults the parents for engaging in this risky behavior.
It's becoming almost comical how many things they're throwing at Trump that just bounce right off of him due to complete stupidity of the thing.
Right. Yep.
So back to the
Slidos
here.
Here I want to talk about something that is actually really big. What's happened here is the Department of Justice has indeed turned over additional records, and what is a bombshell, I don't know what's going on here.
We'll
but
resolve that in just a second.
So they did turn over some additional records, but not everything. Mm-hmm. And what's the bombshell, if we go to the next slide, Jason, is the document cloud thing here. Yeah. This I want to give a shout out to somebody called Katika, who is her handle. And she direct messaged me on, and by the way, if you're not following Katika, Katica, you're making a big mistake, because this is somebody who's very frequently way ahead of the pack. This is a letter that came from the Department of Justice, I think on the 22nd, if we look at this, it's a summary of what they will and will not provide. If you look at the second page and slow down right here, this is really very interesting. The initial estimated volume of top secret emails collected in request number 7 and 9 of the subpoena, plus a request from Chairman Nunes that require collection of top secret communications, is between 50 and 65,000 emails, okay? Then look at this, and I want to dwell on this here. This is gold, Jerry. Regarding request number 9 of the subpoena seeking, quote, all documents and communications referring or relating to proposed, recommended, or actual FISA coverage on the Clinton Foundation or persons associated or in communication with the Clinton Foundation, the FBI is responding by separate classified letter. Now read that and think about that carefully. What that is saying is that there was a request made, the Department of Justice has looked into it, the request seeks all documents and communications relating to FISA coverage on the Clinton Foundation or persons associated or in communication with the Clinton Foundation, and the answer that comes back is, we can't answer that in other than a classified letter, which has been sent, okay?
Because it's so classified,
Well,
even talking about it is against the rules.
But this tells me that for certain, in the missing emails that remain missing, the so-called golden emails, we're going to get into this a bit later, there's a lot more information than we already know about, and that the Department of Justice knows about it, and the Congress knows about it, and I suspect the U.S. attorneys know about it, and I think this tells me, this letter right here tells me that the Clintons are in a lot more trouble, and the people around the Clintons and the people who've been covering for the Clintons and the Obamas, they are in a lot more trouble than people assume they are. Because we are not talking here, remember Hillary's thing, you know, I did not send, or what did you say, send or receive emails that are marked classified.
In my email.
In my email, because I've already made sure that those have all been bleach bit, but
Right.
yeah, not so fast. Those were on Abedin and Auntie Wiener's laptop, and as a guest for many months now, for well over a year, or a couple of years at this point, the investigators have been combing through these combing through these emails. And see, I think what happened in the past, when in the initial salvos, when Obama was still president, and then when people were hoping that Trump would be removed, the approach the deep state was taking, and Peter Strzok and all these crooked people remaining in the FBI and Department of Justice, was to say that they would investigate and say they would analyze these emails, but to purposefully restrict the search of these emails, the search for content of these emails, so as to avoid surfacing these classified emails and surfacing the threads that I think now investigators actually have locked into. This is a very big development.
Yeah. What will happen to Peter Strzok, do you think, Charles?
I mean, I gather he's lost his security clearance. I think this is one of these things where they just try to delay, obstruct, obfuscate, and hope they can cut a deal, you know, that gets them off the hook before they reveal the true extent of the damage they've caused to this country. And I hope that Trump doesn't fall for that, and that people get sufficiently exercised and upset that we start kicking ass, taking names, sending people away, making examples of people who've been doing this, sending them away for very long periods of time, forcing them to pay financial restitution. I hope we're not going to go down a track here where we end up having to kill people
you mean
for treason.
Death sentence, right.
But, you know, it could be that bad. I mean, if what they were doing here was, you know, harboring secrets that really do put this
threaten
nation,
everyone in the United States.
You know, how do you say, well, it's a Clinton, we'll let him off? I mean, I think, you know, there are plenty of reasons why Ethel and Julius Rosenberg, you know, might have sought leniency for this reason, and they got executed. And so, I mean, this could be a very monumental set of revelations coming out of these emails. And I, you know, encourage people doing this work to do it aggressively, to not investigate here the way Hillary was initially, in quotes, investigated under James Comey and Loretta Lynch. We need to understand the whole context here. How many different people sets of people were involved? and we need to put aside whatever their political backgrounds may be, if these are Republicans, if these are Democrats, if these are independents, if they're engaging in espionage to put this country at risk, we need to understand what really happened here, and people need to get punished.
And people can follow Katika on Twitter. She is Poll Analyst.
GOP, political analyst.
Right.
She's, very good work, Katika. Thanks again. So if we go back into the slides, don't hit the link, but Conservative Treehouse has, underneath this one here, has a lengthy analysis that you can also get it, but please don't hit it, Jason.
Sure.
So Judicial Watch, here's something, it is time to get serious about punishing John McCain. This came out also on the same day as that revelation. It turns out that in a fit of pique, remember, a McCain staffer suggested to Lois Lerner that they conduct ruinous audits of conservative groups to teach them a lesson.
Crazy.
So here, and this is important because people forget, and they shouldn't forget, the close relationship that John McCain had when he was in the Senate with Hillary Clinton, and their combined interest and activities in both in Libya, in putting away Muammar Gaddafi, and then after that, in the that was the kinetic military action, I believe that they called it, in Libya, that was such a disaster and has left Libya worse off than it was even under Gaddafi. You got that, and then you have John McCain's diabolical work with the Obama administration, with Hillary Clinton, creating ISIS.
Yeah, hanging out with them for like family reunion fraternity photos.
Right, and I'm sorry, I don't, it's obviously he's at the end of his life, he's had a long life, but that doesn't give you immunity from scrutiny here. And I think John McCain has a much smaller charity that he's involved with that has taken money from Saudi Arabia, and that it operates in the same sloppy fashion, although it's much smaller than the Clinton Foundation. I think this latest news out of Judicial Watch, it just makes my blood boil even hotter. And I think American people need to get behind Judicial Watch, support them financially, encourage them to continue this work. They're doing really excellent work here, and we got to stop this idea that John McCain is on the force side of good. He is not.
I gave some money to that Thorn thing before I knew it was connected to John McCain.
Is that right?
Yeah. Anyway.
Sorry to hear that.
Well, it was only $25, but still, he's a crook.
So if we go, we don't need to pull these up. This is just for your later reading because I'm sensitive to the time. The Chinese, of course, even now are agitating for global government, and you need to take a step. We need to take a step back from that. When we hear, as a nation of 328 million people, hear a nation of 1.3 billion team with another nation of 1.3 billion in India and start talking about how we ought to have global government,
They're halfway there.
And it's not like minority rights in that global government are going to be protected very much. You can be very sure of that. That is not a global governance scheme under either the command approach taken in China, where 150 million communists have far superior, in quotes, rights, and people connected to the core have the rights, and everyone else has what's left over, which isn't very much. Is not a system I'm in favor of. And in India, I've been there a bunch of times. I love the people, and it's fun to go there. Although you take your health in your hands, there is no. They just don't have the experience governing anything other than in chaos. And I don't. This globalist experiment is something that I'm glad Donald Trump has put the brakes on. I'm also glad. I mean, it could be happening right now that Angela Merkel may soon be out of Workle.
That's perfect.
And it's high time that she be displaced. And now we have as well, this debate over how to handle migration. We have the French and the Italians and the Eastern Europeans at one another's throats. We have, the French and the Germans got together and thought they could cut a side deal that would bind Europe to handle it in a certain way, and the rest of Europe said, "Now wait a minute, that's not the way it's going to work here." So I also think, as I've said years ago, and I continue to repeat, these regional governments in Europe make little sense to me unless what they do is cut down the combined amount of government spending in the region, which is not what you see in Europe. What you see in Europe is this experiment has created, encouraged the national bureaucracies to get ever bigger, and then created this superstructure bureaucracy as a step in place. You work as a national politician in Europe, then in the EU, and when you're done with that, you go work for the UN, and you then get in think tanks and different, that is just rubbish. We got to stop. There should be a tax, like a 500% tax on people who do that, who featherbed with, get 2 jobs out of government. We shouldn't be doing that. But anyway, these are exciting moments for those of us who want to see the multilateral, multinational, and regional government organizations put on a diet, or better yet, a path to extinction.
And I just showed our favorite meme of the week.
That was pretty funny. Was that it?
That's the "Shut Up, German Hillary."
So, good news, I think. There's a lot of chatter about, the next one. There's a lot of chatter about the Mueller thing finally imploding. In particular, this prosecution that he launched against a series of firms that didn't exist, and this is going very badly. And there's chatter that from multiple places that, at least with regard to the uranium one piece of the equation, that that investigation will now, I think, be handled out of Salt Lake City by Mr. Huber, or maybe it has been for a while. And it's quite possible that Mueller may be closer to going out of business than people assume. Having really found no evidence of collusion, which isn't a crime in the first place, and then having all these conflicts and all this sloppiness, I think polls are showing that Americans are saying, now wait a minute, you guys have been at this long enough, and the people who've been in the role of these special sorts of prosecutors do confirm that you're not supposed to do this forever. You're supposed to,
have something that you're looking for and find it
within the confines of an actual charter that you share with your congressional oversight committees, which they refuse to do. Yeah. So there are many signs to me that, and this is good news, that the Mueller thing, I think, is close to being over.
I've spoken to a number of people who still feel like, people are getting indicted and arrested and charged, and it's like, yeah, but that's got nothing to do with Donald Trump or Russian interference with the election. Manafort's been thrown in jail for what? Financial crimes from 2005?
Yeah, where we live here in New York, unfortunately, you're going to find quite a few earnest-sounding people.
That was somebody in L.A.
Okay, you've made my point. Or in LA, it's even worse, right?
It is.
Who will sound perfectly reasonable and sane,
right? But
they're living in the alternative universe. Yeah. I think in the flyover heartland, where the overwhelming majority of people live, Americans understand this. Now, I put this up here for our new viewers. In many cases, we've been through this before, and that's why I say we don't need to hit all these links, because we've done it before. But for the people who are trying to understand why Jason and I believe so fervently that there's got to be a lay-down case here, first and foremost in the extent to which the Clintons and their donors illegally use the Clinton charities to make money for themselves, the donors, and to make money for the Clintons, and to advance their political fortunes. There's a clear evidence trail that we've laid out here that the government authorities around the world should have already been studying. But if you're new to this and you haven't seen it before, we've mentioned before that scant days after the election in 2008, Valerie Jarrett signed a document that's a complete joke that was meant in theory to give people comfort that the Clinton Foundation would not be doing what I believe and Jason and others believe it did do while Hillary Clinton was Secretary of State, and that is serve as a pay-for-play clearinghouse device. But she signs this document out of ignorance that we only get, that's to be charitable, that we only get a copy of the real version December 3rd, 2013, because the valiant Tom Fitton at Judicial Watch pressed and insisted, and finally we get the real document. Then this Clinton Foundation issued late, it was due on the 17th of November 2008, they only filed this, what they characterized as an audit on the Clinton Foundation December 12th, 2008. So this audit was false, deceptive, And arguably, BKD conspired with the trustees of the Clinton Foundation and the Clintons and Obama to mislead the Senate as to the veracity, the argument, some of the arguments for Hillary Clinton to hold this job. Remember, she had no international executive branch experience. She traveled with her husband on state business, but she had no authority over international stuff. And so in the arguments as to why she should be involved as the top official for the United States doing international work, a supporting argument was, well, look at all the good work our family has done around the world with our foundation. In reality, the foundation was diabolically nearly bankrupt at this time. They get BKD, I would argue the Little Rock office of BKD is far worse than Arthur Andersen. Okay, it has been covering up scandal after scandal for decades.
Wow.
And a central piece of that scandal has been this BKD, this Clinton Foundation. So they issue a deceptive audit, they pass it off as being compliant. Hillary goes before the Senate. She gets, and remember, this is Barack Obama was a senator, Hillary was a senator, going before their 98 colleagues, and basically pulling the wool over their eyes, hiding the true state of the Clinton Foundation. And the very day they do this, as she's up in Washington, D.C., Hillary gets a personal email on a secret server. The very day. So, to say there's no intent to, set up a system here that nobody will be able to really follow what's going on is bogus. If you had real FBI people, fully empowered to ask the team that was involved in this what really happened, would put the full force of the law and the might of the FBI against these people involved in this, we would find out just how far in advance this was actually thought through.
How did we find out that January 13th, 2009 was the date that the Clinton email server was configured?
Excellent question. If we hit on this link, according to the Horowitz report, that's the date they say it was. But if we hit on this link, which we've shown you before, this is, and we go to the next page, it talks here about how the email server started in around 2007, okay? So Horowitz says 2009, January 13th. But this is lengthy and we won't go into it now. You have the link, government investigators. I've sat down with a bunch of different people in the media, and I'm amazed that they don't know this document has been out for a long time. The Clinton Foundation absolutely must have been using servers prior to 2007. They were conducting business all over the world. They had offices in New York City, they had offices in Boston, they had international offices. Ira Magaziner, who was centrally involved in this fiasco, as he seems to be in many fiascos, was the internet czar under Bill Clinton in the late 90s, well before things got this powerful. So you can be very certain there's a raft of emails, and we shouldn't be starting this investigation in 2007. I hope the investigators in Little Rock, if they're already in New York and elsewhere in Massachusetts and Chappaqua, are going deeply into this, because I'm told by experts, credible experts, that most email can in fact be recovered.
Well, not when the server's been bleach bitted, not from that server. They can get it from some other source probably.
Well, I could tell you, because I'm recovering them in the way in which people around me are sending evidence that has been hidden. What I mean by that, Jason, is that there's so many donors who've been giving
who have the emails,
who have the other side of the email. So they will not have been successful in destroying all of the emails.
Right.
And what will happen when you have a serious team look at this is you say, all right, government of France, time to talk turkey here. What's in your file? Bill Gates, you used to be pretty rich. You still want to be pretty rich. What's in your? Don't tell me you don't understand emails, And then you start going down that path.
He's wiping servers with a cloth.
I don't think so. I don't think that's good. I don't think he's going to be doing. There's going to be enough of this around, and it will not therefore be productive for anyone at this stage when the investigation goes to the level I think it's going to go next. It will not be a smart move to try the approach of I lost them. My dog ate the emails. That's not going to work.
Ate the bits.
So again, I don't want to...
Kibbles and bleach bits?
Yeah, exactly. So this now is a period where Hillary's Secretary of State, and we've been through this before, but to remind people, on the 4th of September 2009, right before Obama spoke at the first reorganized Clinton Global Initiative, they put in, they formed an Arkansas nonprofit corporation called Clinton Global Initiative, Inc. in Arkansas, but they didn't put the paperwork in to get it tax exempt until the following year. And this is, I would argue, the Clinton Global Initiative is perhaps the center of the graft, the system of graft. That was never a charity. That was, a gab fest, an excuse to have an expensive set of parties here in New York with existing world leaders and powerful people and people who want to do deals, get together in rooms, brag about charity, but really not do much charity at all. Instead, spend a lot more time concocting gigantic global deals and payoff schemes around the world. Swindles. Yeah, I like those swindles. I don't like them, but I like the word. So they do that on the 4th of September 2009. And there have to be records in emails of people say, you're going to have to do this, but I don't want to do it. Yeah, you're going to have to. I mean, there's going to have to be a debate back and forth as to why you went from not having the thing as a separate entity to suddenly arguing it's a separate entity, then to put in a fraudulent application to the IRS in August of 2010 for that thing. On the 29th of September 2009, they do another legal reorganization of this entity called CHI. And I'd like to do a little thought experiment, or if you hit that. We put in the EIN 27, next one down.
Sorry.
It's okay, 271414 646. And we hit search at the bottom left.
Let me just get rid of that so it doesn't foul the search.
It's slow. It's, who knows? It could be busy down in New York, but should come up in a second.
Well, Pride Parade is probably hitting this charity search site quite hard.
It's tipping. There we go. Okay, if we hit that Clinton Health Access Initiative, the Clinton Foundation has on its site, it has the application for federal tax exemption for Clinton Global, but it doesn't have this one. And if we hit that, okay, this is the application. We've shown people before that this is a tissue of lies. Okay, this entity, they claim this Clinton Health Access Initiative formed on the 29th of September 2009 was not a successor to any previous activity, which is rubbish. We've obtained now, since our last broadcast, communications from multiple governments that support the claim that not only did the CHI claim to these donors that CHI had been formed in 2002, but CHI got other governments, the government of Ireland, the government of Australia, the government of the UK, and the Gates Foundation to endorse this claim to the government of New Zealand. So you have different governments, instead of telling the truth, what they're doing is they're trying to deceive additional government donors to get involved back in this CHI. And there's quite a tale of specifics on this. We're not going to do it today because it's so lengthy, but the trail, I'm showing you this to say that this wasn't a happenstance, let's put on a play, let's just do this once. No, this is a long-standing pattern and practice of deception, obstruction of the investigations, of using charities for personal gain and political advancement. And you see, these are just some of the steps that we've identified in this presentation. As you know, Jason, I could go on, and our viewers, I think, sadly know, I could go on for quite a long time talking about this, country by country, charity. These are just some of the things, the lowlights, okay? Then on the 31st of December, what was that guy? Notorious B.I.G.?
Notorious BKD.
Or Notorious BAD, yeah. BKD. Anyway, they issue yet another fake audit and pass it off to the IRS, pass it off to donors, pass it off to state governments, pass it off internationally. It seems to the uninitiated like it's an audit, but when I speak, I knew right away it wasn't a real audit. But most people haven't seen as many audits as I've seen. And here you have the Clinton Foundation, as we speak, soliciting illegally. They're saying the Clinton family will put money in. This is this audit we were talking about. Okay.
I apologize. The only reason I clicked on that is that I think there's a typo. We're missing an F at the end of that PDF, so we'll change that before I post it.
Okay, no problem. So in May of 2010, around May of 2010, Bill and Hillary start receiving $17.6 million personally.
Wow.
Okay, a fact, I say it's undeclared because it's on their tax return, their personal tax return, but it's not on the foundation returns. And the purpose of the foundation returns is to identify, among other things, what are called related party transactions, or in this case, what is called illegal inurement.
Yeah.
An inurement being when people
get
paid, for operating a charity. You can't do this. And Laureate, if you do click, if you will, on this NBC News link, if we, this is NBC News. This is not Fox. This is not Breitbart. This is NBC News reporting this. And
nothing but crap.
Well, okay, exactly. But Hillary blasts for-profit colleges, but Bill took millions from one. The one thing they get wrong here is it wasn't just Bill who took the millions. Hillary was married to Bill, and still is married to Bill, so she gets half of his stuff, if not more than half, by the time she gets done with this.
She's blowing the budget on lampshade moo-moos.
Yeah, she clearly does not have a dresser who can see.
When was this photo taken? There's an odd fluctuation to her weight that seems medically related. Like, when people take certain medications and they just get like kind of puffy.
That's August 23rd, 2016, I think.
She looks quite different than the times I've seen her in person in New Zealand and in New York here.
Now you're just name dropping.
Well, no, people
I'm just teasing.
It's Hillary.
You hang around with Hillary Clinton.
Right, yeah. Anyway.
Little did I know.
Yeah.
Anyway. So then in November 2010, this is a wrong link, but they issued another false audit. Then, July 2011, here we hit, let's see if we can hit this Dennis Cheng
This
LinkedIn.
is the guy who is super excited about the London School of Economics.
And Swarthmore, he likes Swarthmore.
Right.
But here's this young guy, but look, Chief Development Officer for the Clinton Foundation, July 2011 to February 2015. Where did he get the connections to be such a prolific money raiser for Hillary? He's a young guy. And what was he really doing, and how come this office where he was operating is down at 77 Water Street is not declared, as it should be, on the New York State registration forms?
How old was he when he was the Deputy Chief of Protocol at the Department of State?
Pretty young, probably 30, 32, I don't know. We can go back down and see when he graduated from Swarthmore. 2001, he was 22, so he's 30. Yeah.
Interesting, to say the least.
So, and then, here's the question nobody seems to be asking. I know when the Clintons walked out of the White House
with all the furniture.
With furniture, there's people claim that actually some of that furniture was personal and that donors had paid for it, or they'd paid for it, or whatever. And I'll almost give them a pass on the furniture. Okay, I'll give them a pass on it. I think it's a little.
Keep the furniture.
You can have the furniture, but I don't give them a pass on having access in Chappaqua, in the Washington D.C. mansion, traveling around to all of these state secrets. When we know that Bill Clinton, has these donors who are, or giving money to the Clinton Foundation, giving him money for speeches. They're not doing that because they like to have Bill around. They like playing cards with him.
$1 million bucks for his birthday.
Yeah, $1 million bucks for his birthday. And they're not doing that just for that. They're doing that because they think, look, we could take advantage of the Clintons. They're sloppy people. We'll get inside information. We'll trade on that inside information. We'll get deals done. And how people could have allowed Hillary to operate the State Department with no inspector general and then just walk out the door February 1st, 2013, still holding on to all this information, and never have a special master, an objective person, say, wait a minute, as happened to Paul Manafort, we're showing up at 4:30 in the morning around the various repositories of all this stuff, and we're going to get the stuff back. and we will decide what's personal and what's work related. And shame on you for conducting, so much personal business at the same time, commingling it with all the federal records. We're not going to give you a chance to separate the wheat from the chaff. We're going to do it on our time frame. And, we're putting you in the penalty box. By the way, you shouldn't be doing too much traveling until we sort this out.
But Charles, even when I point out to the authorities that, hey, here's evidence that could lead to information about stolen data being warehoused in a shed at 4809 Sprayer Street, they give it to the criminal. They don't look at it. They hang up on me, so they're just like not interested in looking at it, even when it's handed to them.
I think that has changed.
I hope so.
But yeah, I do too. So that's just, we start here and we say, look, here's the period when she was Secretary of State. And these are just some of the things that we could talk about. There are many, many additional things we could talk about. This is enough stuff here to say, no, wait a minute. You're not, there's laws we've talked about in the past. You are not, as a public official, allowed to exploit your position for personal or political gain. If your husband is working, or you or your daughter are working for foreign governments in this foundation, you're supposed to register as an agent.
Isn't that what Flynn got in trouble for?
Exactly, right. And so you look at this, and I'm sure there are people who are far more experienced than I, are well along in a process saying, we can only charge them for so many crimes. I mean, there's no point giving them an indictment for 45,000 different offenses. Let's just pick the top 1,000 or the top 100 or the top 25. But out of just this page, there's a lot to see here that says, A, the Clinton Charity Network is a criminal enterprise. It is not a charity. It is operating far outside its charter, its original charter, in ways that break all kinds of state, foreign, and federal laws. And it's doing this right under the nose of Barack Obama and his people. So clearly they had to be enabling this. They had an opportunity to stop it, but they didn't stop it.
It's interesting too, because Michael Flynn was fired by Obama for saying that Obama and Hillary created ISIS intentionally.
Right. Well, yeah, here may be some of the proof.
Wow.
So if we go to the next page, we bring the tale a little bit closer to the present. This is really something, okay? And there's so many strands to this mess that it's easy to get off the rails here and get stuck in the weeds, but I'll try to do this quickly and give you who are watching this a chance to study this and think about it for yourselves. Remember I said that this Clinton Global Initiative was the center of the fraud, the biggest piece of the fraud. I think Chai is another piece. It's a money laundry. I won't get into it now, but it's a way of constructing financial statements that hide hundreds of millions of dollars disappearing, in theory, fighting AIDS. But the Clinton Global Initiative, they themselves boast about projects in the many tens of billions of dollars that they in theory put together. For some reason, by the 28th of January, Hillary is still the Secretary of State. They say, you know what, we better merge this new Clinton Global Initiative back into the foundation. Now, sparing you a lot of detail, under Arkansas law, these were both Arkansas corporations. Again, I'm not a lawyer, but I'm told that you cannot perfect a merger of two Arkansas nonprofit corporations unless at the time of the merger both corporations are validly organized and operated, which neither was. So this is a fake merger, yet another fake merger, just like the fake merger back effective December 31st, 2005 of Clinton Foundation HIV/AIDS Initiative Inc. into the then parent company. That was another fake merger. They know how to do fake mergers. And fake mergers are tough to do correctly, but fake mergers, there's a trail of fakeness. And, to do these fake mergers and then also be fundraising, there's a very simple case that can be made just off this experience in 2013 of epic fraud. They file this merger agreement across state lines from New York, where they are, and Boston, where they are, on the 7th of March. They changed the name to this new name, 9 April 2013, the Bill, Hillary, Chelsea Clinton Foundation. In the warning signs for fraud memos and on the FBI website, they talk about a warning sign for fraud is when you have a charity that's constantly changing its name to be slightly similar and different in the different places. There's so many examples of this. Then on the 28th of June 2013, new auditors come in to this HIV/AIDS thing, new try, and they force a radical alteration in the way they treat contributions by their largest donor, Unitate. Unitate, by this point, had contributed hundreds of millions of dollars towards the Clinton Foundation, which vanished from the Clinton Foundation financial statements. And the new auditor says, no, you can't do that. Okay, I think that process was what triggered the chatter that led to the New York Times article on the 13th of August 2013, which Bill was really upset about, criticized the Clinton Foundation. We've had this up before. I don't like to give the New York Times exposure, but people can read it. And then what's interesting is on the 10th of September 2013, they get an audit for the parent foundation, and this Clinton Foundation registers another fictitious name in Arkansas, just calling itself the Clinton Foundation. Okay, and just so people understand, a fictitious name is a name that you can use in a given state only. Is a doing business as name. All right. So they created this doing business as name.
But isn't that legal, DBA?
It depends whether you're doing it for a foundation or
corporation.
For corporation. In this case, I believe the Clinton Foundation was doing this to suggest that they had authority to operate in areas where they didn't have authority. And I think for that reason it was deceptive, and therefore they could not do this. I also know, because we have their files from the Secretary of State in Arkansas, that they filed numerous false forms. You have to, when you do a fictitious name properly under Arkansas law, you have to file a form. Instead, they didn't take the form, they invented a form, they copied a form, and it's not exactly the right form, and then they filled it in incorrectly.
Charles, Periscope is telling us everything the Clintons do is fake. Do we really know if their name is actually Clinton?
Well, it's a funny thing you should mention that. Bill Clinton's name, his birth name was not Clinton.
What?
Yeah. It was Blythe, I think, was his name.
Whoa.
Yeah, that's well known. I mean,
I didn't know that.
Yeah, his original father, I think his birth certificate name might have been William Jefferson Blythe. We'll have to look into that. But then, remember his father, in theory, had a car crash that killed him while his mother was pregnant.
Wow.
And then his mother remarried somebody whose last name was Clinton, and then Bill changed his name to Clinton.
Wow. I mean, that name is similar to the word Blythe, which, does that lacking due thought or consideration?
Blithely, yeah.
Yeah.
So this is interesting. Then on the 2nd of November 2013, and here's something, please check this, government investigators. Check the bylaws for the Clinton Foundation, which were adopted on the 2nd of November 2013. They changed the bylaws, or they attempted to change the bylaws, amending them to give Bill, Hillary, and Chelsea Clinton virtual absolute control of the Clinton Foundation at board meetings and then in between board meetings. The document is, lawyers tell me the document is basically atrocious. I mean, it's on the one hand, there's a sweep around provision that says, we're going to do all this stuff, but we don't want to do anything that breaks the law, and maybe they hide from that and say, well, of course we didn't really mean to do this because Bill Clinton was a lawyer and Hillary Clinton was a lawyer and she's a very smart lawyer. I don't know how this document came together. We didn't really use it, or we'll have some sort of arguments why maybe you shouldn't take it seriously. But the document plainly states, and it was drafted on the 2nd and effective the 2nd of November 2013, that the Clinton family would have the absolute right to control this public charity for the rest of their natural lives, which is something you cannot do. It's a violation of multiple statutes. It's a violation of the agreement with the National Archives on the 18th of November 2004. It's a violation of the lease that they have with the city of Little Rock. It goes on and on and on. There are all kinds of problems with it.
So, it's just amazing. I mean, there's 83 shows, average length of 2 hours, litany of crimes.
Right. And they're still fundraising as we speak.
Yeah, they're still at it. They're probably doing more crimes as we speak.
So on the 15th of November 2013, they file another set of false tax returns with a deceptive audit for the parent company. The parent company this notorious BKD, who was auditing New Chai, but they replaced with a new firm. The new auditor says, no. With respect to Chai's results in 2012, you've got to account for it in a conservative, appropriate way. BKD says, well, that may be, but we're going to do the Clinton Foundation. We're going to stay to our old incorrect tricks. We're going to have two different bases of accounting. You can't do that, right? But they did do it. And then on the 21st of November 2013, this New Chai amends their tax returns for 2010 and 11 and file new tax returns for Chai on a basis different than the parent company had used. Now, why is this significant? Bill and Chelsea Clinton basically sit on the board of this New Chai, and they sit on the board of the Clinton Foundation with Hillary. So, here the Clinton family allows New Chai to adopt an accounting policy radically different than the parent company permits on the parent company's books for the same entity. And this New Chai is the biggest piece of the Clinton Foundation. It's just, you can't argue that, it'd be like saying, I'm President of the United States and I'm also in charge of California and New York. And so in California and New York, the Chai and CGI, we're going to do things one way, but for the United States books that incorporate California and New York, we're going to use an accounting system that's totally different. And we're going to do that, we're going to make those decisions within 6 days. So there's a paper trail of, doing this completely the wrong way.
I thought you were going to say it was the biggest piece of something else.
I wouldn't use that phraseology on a Sunday. But
it's only on Wednesdays.
That's right. So in an ongoing process, and I told you we're not going to share it on this broadcast because we're running. We've got a lot of stuff to talk about here. We have correspondence with multiple government donors now where they fail to disclose this illegal change of control. Right? In contrast, they say to these government donors, give to New Chai. We're fine, we're in great shape. We're properly organized, operated, et cetera. No. From the 2nd of November 2013, the Clinton Foundation gutted its public charity status, and because they then control New Chai, they gutted New Chai's public charity status, I would argue. And we have, again, multiple emails and communications back and forth on different dates with multiple foreign governments hiding this fact from donors who then agree to give money to New Chai programs, to Clinton Foundation programs. So that's called, illegal solicitation across state lines, using the mail, using the internet, and doing so internationally as well. So I wrote this is in the shameless promotion department. We can hit this link. This is the last piece that I wrote, I think, for Breitbart. I only wrote a few things for them. It hasn't been shared enough, in my opinion, and I hope the crowd will look at this carefully. But back on March 16th, 2015, I said Hillary Clinton will never, she's not going to make it because of the horrible disclosures that came out of the Clinton Foundation while she was one of the three most powerful directors. So she can't say she didn't know anything about it. After she left the State Department, she and Bill and Chelsea illegally inserted themselves in control of the Clinton Foundation, and while they were in control of the Clinton Foundation, they botched all their filings. When you start looking at this, these are not strong arguments for making Hillary Clinton the President of the United States. They're not strong arguments.
Bill has illegally inserted himself into a lot of things.
Easy, Jason. Oh, man.
Sorry.
You could dress him up. Anyway, on compounding all this, on the 9th of January 2015, Eric Braverman, who we all know is smart, unexpectedly resigns. He re-upped his contract for multiple years in December of 2014, then he leaves. Now I'll just share some news, and I'm not going to say who told me this, but I'm hearing from multiple sources that Eric Braverman has been cooperating with the authorities for some time now, and he would know a lot. He's a smart guy, worked at McKinsey, he went to Yale and Yale Law School, he taught at Yale Law School, he's a very smart guy, he would understand the laws, he would He knows the Clinton Foundation from the inside. He knows what the Arkansas crew may have been up. He was in there, he was paid well, and he re-ups and decides to leave. That's a warning sign to me. If the FBI and the Department of Justice went hard against Eric Braverman, he would crumble and he would tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth. And I think there are others out there who no doubt have been cooperating for some time.
It's worth mentioning that it's been about a year since I saw Eric Braverman at the Blavatnik School of Government, and it was very clear to me that somebody was controlling him there and did not want me to speak with him. So I don't know what that means, but people can go onto YouTube and look at this speech. If you just search Blavatnik Braverman, you can see this really interesting speech that Eric Braverman gave there about challenges of government. So it's something worth checking out.
And if we go to the next page, we'll bring this home. I'm not going to shamelessly promote this article that's already been up before many times, but on that same day I wrote another piece for Breitbart calling for the IRS to audit the Clinton Foundation. Now, again, this speaks to risk profile and what we may have avoided here. If you've got if you've got people in the press saying, how come the IRS isn't auditing the Clinton Foundation? If you've got the Inspector General of the intelligence community investigating you for mishandling classified information.
That's not good.
You probably don't want to say, what I think I want to do is raise $1 billion to be in the front of the public's eyes until November of 2016, encouraging every single investigator who has any interest in making a name for him or herself to investigate. I don't think you say, I'm going to run for president when I got an IRS investigation, possibly, and I certainly have the Inspector General of the intelligence community looking into my mishandling over this recent period when I was Secretary of State and still hung on to all this information. But though, Hillary decides to run for president. I issue this report on the 20th of April. If we could hit that link next week, thank you. And I'm not asking people to do it now, but when you have time, it's interesting to go back and look at this report. And if you go down a little bit, Jason, there's some below to the actual report. Yeah. So here, there's a fair amount of detail in this report. And as I did with GE, and it's a 32-page report. As I did with GE, I called. I came up with a name. At the time, I wasn't as convinced that this was, Robin Hood in reverse.
Lion, Legan, Hillary?
Yeah, I said false philanthropy ? With GE, my title was Too Much Imagination at Work ? And so after a short while, I took the question mark off. But because it's very clearly false philanthropy. But this is a report. Read it at your leisure. It's quite interesting, actually. I like to go back from time to time and look at what I wrote in the past and see how close it comes out to being true in the future.
Yeah.
So
it's almost a time phone hack.
Exactly. This is from the Inspector General report. I put it in red here. We learn on the 4th of May 2015 that a private attorney emails dopey James Comey. And I wonder what email address he used to ask that they open a public corruption investigation. So what did dopey James Comey do? He transferred this to McCabe.
Oh.
And so we know that as early as May 2015, Comey was at least considering opening a public corruption investigation. By the next day, Bill O'Reilly says there should be an FBI investigation in the Clinton Foundation. Now, Bill, I don't like the way Bill was run out of Fox in the end, but in his prime, and he was a very loyal Fox person from the very beginning. In his prime, when Bill O'Reilly called for things, people took notice. And I've got to believe there are a large number of people in the FBI who were itching in and around this time frame, 5 May 2015. We really should have an investigation. And I would bet those would include Democrats who, wanted to have a Democrat win in 2016 and may have felt, even as early as May of 2015, that Hillary was a deeply flawed candidate. Let's have another candidate. But that didn't happen. So a number of days later, Marsha Blackburn, courageous Marsha Blackburn, she's running for Senate in Tennessee. She is a stalwart supporter of Donald Trump, an early and admirer and a frequent helper of Donald Trump, and Donald Trump has gone all in to help her. She called on the IRS to investigate the Clinton Foundation by the 19th of May 2015, and I began, before she called on that, or around the time she called on, that's when I began speaking with her staff. We know that by the 10th of July 2015, the FBI did in fact open an uppercase investigation into Hillary Rodham Clinton, Uma Abedin, and others concerning mishandling of classified information. If we hit that link.
And that's only recently become known, correct, Charles?
Well, we've known about it now for months. We've been giving presentations on it, but now it's up to 22 parts here. There's thousands of pages of information. If you want to satisfy yourself that they were investigating her, they weren't investigating Colin Powell and Madeline Not So Bright and these other people. They were investigating Hillary Clinton and her team for mishandling classified information. And thank you, members of the FBI Vault, for making this public. I wish you'd declassify or get Donald Trump to declassify more so we can see more of what was going on. I'd love to see more parts dropped as soon as possible. But come on, the Inspector General of the intelligence community began investigating shortly after Hillary Clinton's people on the 5th of December 2014 transferred over what purported to be all of her work-related and potentially work-related emails. A quick check of those emails revealed classified information right away, and the alarm bells went on. So it took then until July 10th, 2015 for there to be an open FBI investigation into Hillary Clinton's people for mishandling classified information. And I would have thought that had Bernie Sanders and other people in the Democratic Party known about this, they would have said, Hillary, look, get through your investigation. Let's have somebody else run this time. Don't waste so much time, effort, and money contesting the primaries, and don't try to freeze everyone else out.
Well, but this is just another piece of evidence that Bernie Sanders, who I was a big supporter of and wanted to become president, was just a player in the play, and that he never had an honest intention of going the full distance and becoming president. He was just there to, I guess, drive people towards the Democratic Party. And there were a lot of people who emailed me personally and were like, oh, you gotta step up and vote for Hillary now. You can't have Trump in there. When Bernie was out, I was like, nah.
Ixnay, yeah.
Not doing that.
Yeah. So if we go back into the slides, by August of 2015, I call this, what's been reported, it was a nomination rigging agreement with the DNC involving Debbie Wasserwoman Schultz, or whatever her name is, and this law firm Perkins Coie tied to Barack Obama. Bob Bauer was Barack Obama's personal attorney, top personal attorney, was a partner at Perkins Coie. I think what we had here was some sort of an agreement between, or maybe involving the big money behind both the Clintons and the Obamas, saying, listen, Hillary is going to be the nominee. We're not going to screw this up like we did in 2007 and 8. She's going to be the nominee. A lot of pressure was put on people. We deserve to know. I don't particularly care. I'm not a Democrat. But if I were a Democrat, I'd be ripshit at this. I really would be. The Republicans are supposed to be the party of the back room. Okay? This is not even, you didn't even get to the room part of it. This was just like, let's just anoint Hillary President of the United States, and we can have this pretense of primaries and stuff like that. We're just going to rig it so that she's going to absolutely win. And at this time, wouldn't you know, all this time, between the time she announces and the 9th of April, whenever it was, the 12th of April 2015, and the time that they rigged this nomination process, she's still a Class A controlling director of the Clinton Foundation through the 10th of September 2015. I will bet that she told not a single donor that she had done this double dipping of controlling a foundation illegally, rigging the primary process. You can't do this kind of stuff and get away with it.
Well, not only that, Charles, the DNC fraud lawsuit that Jared and Elizabeth Beck have brought, the class action suit they've brought against the DNC, they basically admitted, the lawyers for the DNC admitted that they don't have to select whoever it is that wins the primary. They can just smoke cigars in the back room and pick whoever they want.
Makes you really excited to be a Democrat with that kind of charter.
Why bother giving them any money?
I know, the same, well, and maybe the same is true for Republicans, but it's just despicable.
It's not the way the primary process is supposed to work. That's not voting.
These aren't our values.
Yeah.
So if we go here to this link, again, it's shameless self-promotion, but I don't know that people have actually gone onto the site enough and looked at this. I wrote, this is the 2nd of November, 2015, have the Clintons turned New York into the epicenter for global disaster relief charity frauds? I think the answer to that question is yes. Yeah. Okay, so what are you going to do about it, Barbara Underwood, Acting Attorney General of New York? You just going to be a patsy for the Clintons? I mean, they're not even from New York. I mean, these people are defending the Clintons. Hillary's a carpetbagger in Arkansas, and Bill is a carpetbagger here, and Hillary here in New York. Why are you defending these people when the trail of corruption is so long, it's so wide, and it escalates even to this day? Why defend these people? I don't get it. It's obvious. And I have tried to report the Clinton Foundation and related frauds to New York. Of course, I get nothing back because we live here in New Yorkistan, where they don't care about anything other than the people who are politically connected.
So you're not hopeful that Barbara Underwood will make some sort of change there in the Attorney General's office in the state of New York?
Well, what I would note to her and to Governor Cuomo and others is a lot of eyes are watching this. And as this trail is exposed, and should indictments become unsealed, should people go into courtrooms, should they cop pleas, should they start turning on the Clintons, then the degree to which New York State has been a state that has really enabled charity fraud and cost this state and her taxpayers hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars that are badly needed in this state now for infrastructure to bring down our debt, et cetera. As the story gets told, they're going to look more and more embarrassed.
Well,
and maybe, we're also talking criminal.
Yeah, legal exposure, right?
So So they went ahead, and we don't need to push, this is something we've had before. Notwithstanding all these problems, and notwithstanding the fact that the Clintons said all along in 2015, we don't need to file no truthful tax forms, they refiled forms and compounded their legal liability on the 16th of November 2015. So we go to the next page. We'll fly through this. I made some predictions. It's fun to go back and look at them early in January, but the FBI at some point opens a Clinton Foundation investigation, and the question is, why did it take the FBI so long?
No, they're busy obstructing the investigation.
They're busy texting and sexting and dallying and whatever they do, at least at the top level. But this is prediction number 1.
Intense focus on Clinton Foundation public disclosures will lead prime money sources to abandon support for Hillary Clinton's candidacy.
So that
Norway did that.
Huh?
Didn't Norway do that?
Well, what I'm saying is that I think, I would argue that as people with money and experience with giving money to charities began to look closely at Hillary's behavior here, I think enough of them, as it came time to think about having a conscience and pulling the lever in the voting booth, I think enough people basically said, nah, like you, I can't do it. I cannot. I'm inclined to vote for a Democrat, but I just can't vote for this team. Team corruption, not Team Clinton.
I actually don't even think in terms of Democrat, Republican. I was just like, Hillary Clinton is a gigantic criminal and we can't have her be the president.
That would be a bad move.
Yeah.
So if we go back into the, So they did open the investigation. We've talked ad nauseum about how a senior State Department official walked into the Washington FBI
Really
field
wanna
office.
know who that is.
I wish we could know. Soon we will know, I believe. Then, of course, crooked Andrew McCabe, slithering snake that he is, becomes the second most powerful person in the FBI, and long-standing loyalist, prototypical G-man, Mr. Giacalone, retires early. I mean, we got to understand the calculus behind selecting McCabe for his position, and the explanation of why and when Giacalone left. These are very important questions.
And he's the guy who's testifying now, right? Giacalone?
Yeah. He's testifying, I think, imminently, if he hasn't already. We don't need to pull this link up, but there's another report that I put out on the 24th of February, on just focusing on the period 23 October, the beginning of the Clinton Foundation through 2010. Then I upped the ante on May 1st. Zero Hedge picked it up on the 7th of May 2016, which is right around the time that the Clintons and the FBI began to gin up the attack against Team Trump, right, almost at the same time. We stepped the pressure up on the Clinton Foundation, and maybe the thinking in the FBI and Brennan and elsewhere was, we got to have something to offset this inquiry. Let's focus on, let's gin something up against Trump and Russia collusion. I think they're probably interconnected in one way or another.
And they've characterized you as a Wall Street whistleblower.
Which is sort of what I am.
Yeah.
Anyway, so here Blackburn issues another call for investigations. This time, John Koskinen by July says we are going to have the IRS investigate. And this got a lot of attention. Richard Pollack is a great reporter.
Sorry about that, Charles.
That's all right. Did a great piece there. And then just before the 60-day rule kicked in, another piece I did on the 7th of September got a lot of attention on Zero Hedge. We've had this up before, but let's look and see how many shares. If you go 3,000 shares, but if you go further down at the bottom, it tells you how many views this thing got to date. It's further down, right there. 278,000 views. That's a fair number of views. I mean,
I would say.
A well-read Zero Hedge piece gets 50. Something that's 50,000. Something that is, very titillating or controversial might get in the millions.
Huh.
But to get up to something this dense, this long, 278,000 views, that's not bad.
No, it's very good, as a matter of fact.
So, Marsha's people issued another great report. Let's not put that one up because we've had it in the past. But let's close this slide with this Daily Caller piece that just came out on the 22nd on Friday. This is something that needs, by Sidney Powell. Sorry about that.
No, it's my bad. I've got the ad blocker on there to try to prevent websites like that from constantly showing ads, but then we can't look at the website.
So,
what just happened? Well, there you go.
What is it?
It's a good moment to remind people to sponsor Crowdsource the Truth, where you don't have to look at crap like that.
Here's a nice picture they put up here. I suppose you can readily get unflattering pictures of me, but this is certainly not. Is this the team you want hanging around the nuclear button? I mean, Hillary Clinton looks like she's screaming, and Uma Abedin needs to do something about those teeth. But anyway, the point here is that, of this article, is that we talked about this last Sunday, that, and I think it's before October 4th, 2016, the New York office of the FBI knew they had found 700,000 emails. It's a lot more than 40, whatever the number was, 34,000.
It's hard to imagine that number of emails.
Oh, yeah, I don't know.
It's a lot.
Yeah, but I mean, this is a person who was in
Over
charge
years.
of, huh?
Over years.
Yeah. So I hope that our government authorities, who are prepared to look critically at these emails, are in fact analyzing them rigorously. And I think when we said bombshell I think that's what we got out of that report from Justice and that letter that we talked about in the first full slide.
Right.
I think they are looking at these emails, and I think they have already found evidence of epic corruption.
So Charles, do you feel that a lot of people who are analyzing that Inspector General report from Mr. Horowitz might have just glossed over it and said, he didn't incriminate anybody, but if you dig in there, there are gems?
Yeah, well actually I think the Horowitz report is a process, it's a part of an administrative process. I think, in addition, what's going on, we know there are open FBI investigations, criminal investigations. We know there are multiple U.S. attorneys impaneling grand juries in various places. And we see, from the work that you and I have done and others have done, we see obvious criminality, charity fraud. We can't connect the dots specifically on public corruption other than with Laureate. I mean, why did Laureate Corporation pay Bill Clinton $17.6 million while his wife was Secretary of State? Laureate being an entity that operated, I think, suspiciously, in certain cases illegally, lots of for-profit universities internationally, an area where the Secretary of State's interest or determination to make life difficult could have affected Laureate. And that's just one piece. But to do public corruption, you really have to show, quid and quo and exchange. And that's not my province. My province is just Clinton Foundation. Filings are supposed to be true and correct, not deceptive and not omitting key information. You're not supposed to go solicit donations when you have incorrect filings. That we've shown. That they've done. So if we go to the final slide of the day, anyway, the great, and I say the great Congressman Nunes has given another deadline to the Department of Justice to provide, by 5 p.m. tomorrow, on the 25th, the DOJ must provide information concerning how the FBI may have spied on the Trump campaign. It's a final deadline. Andy McCarthy in the second link there.
Well, how is Nunes able to provide that deadline? Why is now?
He's a chairman of a powerful committee.
I see.
And he's got the backing of Paul Ryan in theory.
Backing of Paul Ryan is not, I don't know.
Mr. Jellyfish. But if we go on that second link, this is another Andy McCarthy National Review piece, but again, read it at your leisure. Donald Trump has a tremendous amount of power right now. I think he's been proven right on this investigation from the start. He has the unilateral right to declassify a lot of the information that is being held back from Congress and from the American public. And I, in this broadcast, call on you, Mr. President, to do just that. Enough is enough. This team, Rosenstein, to a certain extent Sessions, and others in the Department of Justice, we see their true colors in this incident. With the restaurant, we saw a Department of Justice person, Hector, your head of Homeland Security. There are political partisans in our Department of Justice even now who are doing their level best to obstruct the will of the American people expressed in the vote of 2016, and our natural interest in seeing justice done. The Department of Justice, in my view, is obstructing justice. And Donald Trump can do, with a flick of a pen, with good team, he can look at some of this information, he can make a determination to declassify it, get it out in the public domain, and order Sessions and Rosenstein to comply with Congress.
When are we going to see Rod Rosenstein removed from that position, Charles? He's doing just nothing but obstructing and creating a disaster.
Yesterday would not be soon enough.
Yeah, he's not my favorite guy.
Me either. We've been on a campaign against him for some time.
He's just bad news, I think.
So the third link here is there's a wonderful person named Clarice Feldman, who is a former Department of Justice, I believe, employee. She's got a very, very funny writing style, very good writing style, and she's written this piece calling what happened with the kids, politicizing the kids, not Hurricane Katrina, but Kid Trina, It's pretty funny. And
There you go.
and here she refers to her online friend Randy Bach, who is a classmate, I think 1 or 2 years ahead of me at Horace Mann.
Wow.
And I think he also went to Yale, come to think of it.
Wow.
But anyway, read this at your leisure. She's got a very good way of writing. Let's not, I don't want to pull this link up other than just to note this is One America News Network, which I think is beginning to do a competitive job to Fox. I think as Fox tries to go more to the left,
Right.
One America News Network is staying where it's trying to occupy territory Fox once held. And here, Trump is requesting Democratic cooperation, but you've got Democrats thinking that just by obstructing they're going to win. I think that's not going to help them at all.
No.
And you have McCain and Flake and Corker, and I'm increasingly calling him Mitt, not Romney, but Wrongney, because he seems to be wrong about most things. He's running. We'll see if he gets wins the Senate runoff.
I've never found Mitt Romney to be impressive at
I mean, well, on paper he's impressive. What he did at Bain Capital was very impressive to we investor types, but in person, he just doesn't come across as genuine.
Well, it's like, let's combine Baskin Robbins with Dunkin' Donuts. It's like, that's brilliant. Get all the fat people into one place.
Yeah. And now, here, John Brennan, I can only countenance pulling up one link of John Brennan, so let's not pull this next one up, but he's calling on members of Trump's cabinet and Republicans to abandon Trump. But let's pull up this New York Magazine piece down here, Jason, the next one. Okay, this just recently came out.
He just looks like
Didn't recently come out. This came out in September, before the election.
he looks like Frankenstein's grandfather or something.
But look at this, September 22nd, 2016. This is in New York Magazine. This isn't in, a right-leaning publication. This is a far left-leaning publication. Before the election, CIA director reveals he was once a communist sympathizer. Do you think that came up in a security clearance interview?
I mean, I think that would have gotten you run out of town not long ago.
Or maybe maybe that's what got him to be CIA director under Barack Obama. I mean, the standards were different, perhaps, but I mean, it's preposterous. In this time frame,
he was disgusted by Watergate, so
Yeah.
he vowed to do something even more disgusting.
Yeah, I guess he and I are around the same time, same age rather. I mean, the notion that
He looks like he's 80.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, that's what hate does. But I mean, the notion that you in this time frame would think about becoming a supporter of the Communist Party, and that after that you'd end up, getting to be the CIA director is just. There needs to be a lot of thinking about, exactly who is working for us in our security services. I don't think somebody who was a member of the Communist Party, a proponent of the Communist Party, in that time frame, has any business being in our CIA right now. Maybe be a contractor, go teach at Columbia, where the Communist Party had a lot of people, may still have a lot of people. But, I mean, come on. After the Soviet Union is dismembered, you're still going to have diehard people in the CIA who believe, who once believed communism made any sense.
He's a crypto-Stalinist.
I think, I mean, if we had a George W. Bush, former CIA director, encouraging members of Obama's cabinet to rebel against Barack Obama, I think, we'd have riots in the streets. Yeah. How does this Brennan guy get off doing this kind of stuff? And I think Donald Trump's being way too tolerant.
Charles, I don't mean to distract, but speaking of crypto-Stalinists, cryptocurrency has been taking it on the chin. It's reaching months-long lows.
But I think this is old, right? That's 24 hours ago?
This is Coinbase right now.
Why does it say 24 hours? Does that mean it's
within the last
changing?
24 hours?
Yeah, I think there's been a development. Well, anyway, you know my feelings on that stuff.
Yeah.
Now, one thing here that we don't have to pull up the link, but everyone's many people are concerned that by Donald Trump's pushing the Chinese around, that the U.S. is going to have the weaker end of the bargain. And my analysis of China, and which I think agrees with an expert, Gordon Chang's analysis of China, suggests that China is a lot weaker than we may want to believe. And I don't know many serious investors who really want to set up a big operation in China where you cannot control your operation in China the way you need to.
Because you can't own, as a foreigner, more than 49% of a company or something?
Well, there's that and the regulation. I'm not exactly sure the precise cutoff, but it's very difficult to behave the way serious investors like to behave, which is they like to own as much of the company as possible, and they like to control it, and they like to be nimble, and they don't like to think that they're going to put capital into a country and have the rules
Never
changed.
see it again.
Yeah, that's something they don't like to do, and have their secrets stolen and stuff. So I think just if you look at raw numbers, the size of the U.S. economy, these UNCTAD data show clearly that our economy is far bigger and far more robust than China's. And our infrastructure is actually far better.
Really? They got all those bullet trains?
Yeah, but that's the parts of the country that you get to go to. In the interior, where there are a lot of the people in the rural areas, it's not,
People like stealing bricks from construction sites.
Right. And so, I wouldn't be so quick to believe that pushing China hard now will end up hurting the United States more than it'll hurt China. China has set up these gigantic factories to serve the global market. Our factories in the main are set up to serve the American market primarily.
What about the petro yuan that we recently heard about, that China is now buying oil for yuan? Doesn't that threaten the U.S. economy?
Look, it's what are you going to do with your petro yuans? You've got to invest them in what? China, right? Either you sell your oil, you're Iran. You sell your oil for these petro yuans. Now you've got petro yuans. What do you do with them?
Buy Chinese stuff?
You have to buy something in China or sell them for some other currency. I'm not, again, the internal market in China just isn't there yet. The differences are vast.
Yeah. And to your comment just a moment ago, as I was leaving Hollywood, there was a big shift towards China. China was building thousands and thousands of movie theaters. They were talking about this growing middle class, that going to the movies was a big deal for people in the Chinese public because they had never had it before. 3D was hugely popular and had a lot of different Chinese companies coming to me, and I mean, this is obviously anecdotal, but they would give me like agreements to sign where it would be like, come to China for 3 years and do all this stuff. And I'd say, well, where's the part about how much money I'm going to get? And they say, no, just sign this and we'll work that out once you get to China.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Not doing that.
Yeah. Much as I like, you don't even like Chinese food.
No, that's true.
What I do.
Only Jewish person in New York who doesn't like Chinese food.
So, rumors are that Donald Trump is laying the groundwork as people are preparing to have a summit in July next month, shortly, with Vladimir Putin. That'll be earth-shaking.
Yeah.
One thing, we spent a fair amount of time, and I don't know how many views that interview with Byrne now has.
It was doing pretty well, and it's been, as you point out here, picked up by Investment Watch blog.
Well, and lots of other better known things too.
Have picked up our interview?
No, this isn't our interview. This is the RICO suit by Gary J. Byrne.
But I think this uses our video.
Oh, yeah. Does it? Okay, there you go.
There it is.
And how many? What do you know?
If we check it here on the Crowdsource, it's
18,000.
So.
And look, it's 884 up votes, 51 down.
Well, I think Mr. Chavez's friends are no longer buying negative votes for our videos for whatever reason.
So this is something worth watching, a situation worth watching. I think Gary admits, and thank you, Gary, for your service. He admits that the civil RICO lawsuit is a stretch, but he's hopeful. He's launched it in the hopes that it'll heighten the pressure on the Clintons, it'll heighten the pressure on the co-conspirators, and lessen the interest of rich people to continue to fund the Clintons. So
Yeah.
I think it's a good move. I certainly enjoyed the conversation.
As did I. He also acknowledged that what Jared Beck had surmised from reading it, which was that it was written in such a way as to kind of enable certain strategic things from a legal standpoint down the road. So it wasn't necessarily his goal to, win the RICO suit, but possibly through the discovery process or some of the other things that will come out in the course of the suit, it might enable the prosecution of the Clintons down the road.
So far be it for me to venture into your area of expertise and talk about films that I think might work. But having said that, I really think we ought to take a look at it. This has got to be a winner. Dummycrats.
Yeah.
I mean, I think Diamond and Silk. When I first noticed them back in whatever it was, 2015, they are straight up hilarious.
Yeah.
And not simply because the way in which they disrespect. They just take somebody on. It's very smart views.
Oh yeah.
Artfully expressed, with biting humor. Very thoughtful ladies, strong ladies, who are doing extremely well.
Yeah.
And I think this film will be great.
Well, it's also interesting when you get someone who comes along with something that is so contrary to the norm. I mean, black women who are supporting Donald Trump and Republicans are not what you would typically expect to see. And as you said, they're very smart in what they say. And I like it because they kind of cross a demographic. You and I sit here talking about this stuff. There's certain people that just won't listen to us because we're white men. And they can, I think, cross demographics and speak to an audience that otherwise might not listen to these views. So they're actually very important voices right now.
I agree. Fantastic.
Yeah.
So I just want to point out that we've made it pretty close to the 2-hour goal here.
Well, there you go, Charles. And I think it was a great presentation today. People were excited to see you as a secret agent in all your glory there. So I guess that's all we have for this Sunday, right?
I think so. I mean, I don't know what coming attractions you care to preview.
Well, there's a lot of stuff happening, but we'll let that unfold as it does. I definitely want to thank you for another excellent presentation.
Thank you.
I want to thank all of our viewers. Charles, it's great to be back with the live streaming. We've got 1,474 people watching us right now. And again, even if just those 1,400 out of the 60,000 plus subscribers that we now have on the YouTube channel, if they would become regular subscribers on patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth, even for $1 a month, that's the type of range we're looking, $1 to $5. We keep the company financially healthy, allow these broadcasts to continue on into the future, and I look forward to people doing that. I want to thank our generous sponsors that we've got right now. We've got lawsuits that I've got to deal with, frivolous lawsuits I might add, from people that are intent on stopping this information from coming forward. Those lawsuits do not represent anything of real evidentiary value. They are merely strategic lawsuits intent on preventing me from speaking to people like yourself, people like Gary Byrne, people like Robin Gritz, the CIA whistleblowers like Kevin Shipp, and all the various, and I mean certainly Quinn Michaels. They don't like it when I speak to him. He's bringing forward a lot of great information. But I want to thank you for another great episode, Charles.
Thank you, Jason.
I want to thank everybody for watching, and I will see you tomorrow.